Well, fifth graders, welcome back. As we are working through distance learning, the last couple of days we've been working on adding and subtracting decimals and whole numbers. As you can see on the board behind me, I have a decimal math problem. We have 34 and 6/10, and we're going to add to that 28 and 87 hundredths. If you remember from the previous lessons, we want to make sure when we're adding decimals or subtracting decimals that we line up that decimal point to make sure all of our numbers are in the correct place value. So if I'm going to add 34 and 6/10 to 28 and 87 hundredths, if I line up my decimal point, I should have my other numbers in the correct place value. Now, when you get to situations like this, you need to add a zero as a placeholder there. Remember, 60 hundredths is the same as 6/10, or you can think of it as 6 dimes is going to be the same as 60 pennies. It's the same value. So when we have it set up and we put our placeholder in place, now we can go through the addition. 0 plus 7 is 7. 6 plus 8 is 14. I can regroup and bring my 1 up top. Remember, bring down your decimal point. 8 plus 4 is 12, and 1 more makes 13. Regroup my 1. 3 plus 1 is 4, and 2 more makes 6. So our final answer is 63 and 47 hundredths. The same situation goes when we have subtraction. If we look at this subtraction problem's written horizontally, we want to rewrite it vertically so we can make sure we line up all the place values. In this case, 27 is larger than 18. So even though the number is shorter, it's still larger. Sometimes fifth graders get confused and they want to put the longer number on top. But the longer number isn't necessarily the larger number. So we're subtracting from 27 and 3/10. We're going to subtract 18 and 845 thousandths. So once we have it set up, we need to make sure we put in our placeholders. Remember, adding zeros on the end is not going to change the value of that number. It's still the same value. But now that I have it set up, I can go through and work my subtraction. We cannot subtract 5 from 0, so we're going to have to trade cross zeros. I'm going to regroup my 3 so that I can subtract. So I'm going to have my 10 subtract 5 is 5. 9 subtract 4 is 5. And 2 subtract 8 I can't do, so I need to regroup and borrow. So I'm going to regroup that. 12 minus 8 is 4. Remember, bring down your decimal point. 6 minus 8, I can't do that. I need to regroup again. So 16 minus 8 I can do. So my final answer here is 8 and 455 thousandths. Now, part of our state standard is to be able to add, subtract, multiply, divide, do all your computation skills with real world problems, a real world situation. So we have some here. As you know, my son Matthew, he's a senior this year. He plays soccer. So he's been playing soccer for 10 years. He wants to make his own little field in our backyard. Now, obviously, it can't be a full-size soccer field, but he wants to rope off an area that's 32 and 5/10 feet by 14 feet. How much rope is he going to need to create this area? So anytime you're faced with a real-world problem, you got to think about, what are they asking me? Some of you are probably saying, Mr. Greenfield, I know they're asking us how much rope we need. So I always underline that when I'm dealing with a real world problem. So if you're working in your packet or your bundle at home, you're going to want to underline the question they need to answer. The other thing we want to look for is, what important information do I need? And I like to circle those. So let's say I'm looking for, well, I know that it is 32 and 5/10 feet long and it's 14 feet wide. So sometimes it's helpful if we create a picture. Now, I know I'm not the best artists out there, but if we look at that, we're going to try and recreate what they're telling us in the math problem. I know that it's 32 and 5/10 feet long and it's 14 feet wide, this area that Matthew wants to rope off. Now, I need to go back to my question. They're asking us how much rope we need to create this area. Now, if I'm going to rope this off, I'm going all the way around the outside of the object. So we need to be thinking, what am I finding here? I know some of you are probably saying, Mr. Greenfield, you got to find the perimeter. You're going all the way around the outside. That's correct. Now, some of you might have got distracted by this word. You might have seen the word area. Well, the area is talking about this space. So there is an area here, but what we're looking for is to rope off the outside of that area. So we're actually trying to find the perimeter of that shape, roping it off. And so now I need to know all four sides. Now, if it's a rectangular shape, we know that whatever my base is, the top of that object's going to be the same length. And my width over here is 14, or if we're looking at the other side, that's going to be 14 as well. So I need to add all of these up. So I'm going to be adding decimals and whole numbers, a mixture of them. Now, there's a couple of different strategies you can use. I am going to list all four of them. I know some of you are probably thinking, well, Mr. Greenfield, I'm just going to add the 14 and 14, and I'm going to add these two, and then I'm going to combine the answers. And that strategy is a valid strategy too. You can do that as well. But you notice how I have it lined up. You notice I have the 14 here. Because if it's a whole number, we know there's a decimal behind it. There's actually going to be a 0. 14 and 0/10 is the same as 14. So you still want to make sure that you're lining this up when you're working with whole numbers and decimals. Don't line up the numbers. Make sure you're lining up the place value. This is the ones digit. The 4 has to be in the same place as the 2, which is the 1 digit, and 32 and 5/10. Now that I'm sure I have all four sides, and they want to know how much total rope Matthew's going to need in order to create his little mini soccer field in the backyard. Now I'm ready to add this up. So I can take 5 and 5, and I can get 10, and regroup, bring my 1 up there. Make sure you bring down your decimal. I have 4 plus 4 is 8, plus 2 makes 10, 2 more makes 12, and 1 more makes 13. And I have 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 plus 3 is 8, and 1 more makes 9. So Matthew's going to need 93 feet in order to cover his area in the backyard that he wants. So once again, whenever I'm faced with a real world problem, I always look at the question and then look for the important information that we have in there. Let's try another one. Christy has $20 to go shopping with. She goes to the store. She bought grapes. Grapes were at $3.67. She also saw her favorite cereal, Lucky Charms, for $2.25 and decided to buy that as well. But then Mom texted her and said, while you're there, can you bring home some eggs, please? And the eggs were $2.54. So after buying the grapes, the cereal, and the eggs, how much money does she have left? So there's a lot going on in this problem. So go back to, what do they want us to find out? How much money she has left over. Do I know how much she spent? I know what she bought. She bought grapes, eggs, and Lucky Charms. But do I know how much she spent yet? No. So we need to figure out that. So that's the important information that I'm looking for first. So I need to know my costs. Well, I know that Lucky Charms was $2.25. My eggs were $2.54, and my grapes were $3.67. So I need to figure out how much she spent first. And how would I do that? Some of you are probably saying, well, this is easy, Mr. G. I already know. We're going to add those all together. So let's add these up. Make sure we're lining up our decimal points. And then I always like to go back through and double check, make sure I have the right numbers, because it would be awful to go through the entire process and realize you wrote the wrong numbers down and end up with the wrong answer. So now that I have this and I have my decimal points lined up, I have my ones here, I've got my tenths, my hundredths. Now I can go through and add and figure out how much money she spent to begin with. Well, 7 plus 5 is 12, and 12 plus 4 would be 16. I've got 7 plus 7 would be 14 if I group these two and group those two. So I have 14. Remember to bring down your decimal. And I've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have $8.46 that Christy has spent. Now, some of you might be thinking, I'm done. I'm moving on to the next problem. So we got to go back to, did we answer the question? How much money does she have left? Oh, no, I didn't. I know how much she spent, but I don't know how much money she has left. How much money is mom expecting to get back? So if mom gave her $20, it would be $20.00. And Christy spent $8.46. We would need to subtract these in order to figure out how much money she has left. So as you can see, there's a lot of zeros there. So we're going to have to trade cross zeros when we're subtracting. Make sure those decimal points are lined up. I cannot subtract from 0. So I'm going to have to work my way all the way over to this whole number in the tens place. So we're going to trade these two tens for one 10. And we'll make 10 ones. We'll have to borrow from those and work our way across. All right. So I have 10 in the hundredths place. Minus 6 would give me 4 hundredths. 9 in the tenths place minus 4 would give me 5 tenths. Or in other words, we have 54 hundredths. 5 tens and 4 ones, 54 hundredths. 9 minus 8 is 1, and 1 minus nothing would be 1. So Christy will have $11.54 left of the money. That's what mom's going to be expecting when she comes home and return to her mother her change. So your job today, you will see in your learning bundle, you're going to have some real world addition and subtraction decimal problems. I want you to work through those. And when you're finished, you can check with your parents. They have the answer key and they can go through and you can get immediate feedback on how you did. Just make sure you look at the question. In this case, they're asking us how much liquid's in the pot. So we have 2 different liquid amounts that the chef has stirred into that pot. Boy, looking at that, 14.5 liters. That's a large pot if you're fitting that many liters of liquid in there. So, and the chef is stirring in an additional 9 2/10 liters of water. And they want to know how much is in the pot. So we have to look at, does this mean I'm going to add? Does this mean I'm going to subtract? What are they asking me to find? So always look at the question first, then work on your computation. You may have to, in some of these cases, do multi-steps like we did here, where we had to add first to figure out how much she spent and then subtract to figure out how much money she has left over. So in some of those cases, you may have multi-steps. Some of them, you may only have one step. So there's 2 sides to this sheet. And the other part you're supposed to be doing today is, if you look at, there's a sheet in here where it has grid paper where you can show your work. And this will help you line up your place value, your decimals, and your whole numbers. When you're all done with that, we want you to begin spiral 5. Now remember, spiral 5, anytime we do a spiral sheet, it's all review. So if you look up here, we're working on place value. taking a mixed number, writing it as an improper fraction, review of perimeter and area of a figure, basic multiplication, converting 33/4 into a mixed number. So all these are review. Do some of this today. Part of Spiral 5 you're going to do as well tomorrow. If you have any questions, please email me.